Is Pakistan making inroads in ties with the new interim government of Bangladesh? Women are prohibited from speaking and singing in public. New morality laws in Afghanistan showcase the country's aggressive agenda. Floods in the southern Indian states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana leave a trail of devastation. All this and much more on Inside South Asia.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandna.
And I'm Jyotsna Kumar. And on the show today, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has said that it is incumbent on both Israel and Palestinian Islamist group Hamas to say yes on remaining issues to reach a Gaza ceasefire deal. This as the United States is pushing for a proposal to bridge gaps between both the sides, which include disagreement over Netanyahu's insistence on leaving some Israeli troops on the border between Gaza and Egypt. That's a Philadelphia corridor. We'll get you more on that.
This and a lot more right here on World DNA. We also bring you the complete report on what's happening in Germany. German police shot dead a man who opened fire on them in what they treated as a foiled terrorist attack on Munich's Israeli consulate. It came on the anniversary of the 1972 Olympic Games and the killings that took place in those games. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said he was grateful for the quick reaction of the emergency services in Munich. We'll bring you the complete story on that front. For now, let's start with headlines.
German police termed the shooting near the Israeli consulate in Munich a terrorist attack. Suspect shot dead by police identified as 18-year-old Austrian national.
U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken urges both Israel and Hamas to finalize a Gaza truce, reiterates U.S. assessments that 90% of a deal was ready.
Hamas urges the United States to press Israel for a truce in Gaza. Lead negotiator accuses Prime Minister Netanyahu of derailing a ceasefire deal.
Police in United States arrest father of the teenage suspect in connection with a school shooting that left 4 people dead in Georgia.
France gets a new prime minister after months of political upheaval. Newly appointed Michel Barnier calls for more unity and respect in the politically divided country.
Ukraine's parliament approves nomination of Andrei Sybiha as foreign minister. He replaces Dmytro Kuleba as part of the biggest government reshuffle since the Russian invasion in 2022.
India surpasses China to become the top weight national in the MSCI Emerging Market Index for the first time. Morgan Stanley highlights that India's position will attract additional foreign capital into Indian firms.
"39-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo becomes the first player to score 900 career goals. The five-time World Player of the Year was on target as Portugal beat Croatia 2-1 in the Nations League. And our top focus at this hour on World DNA. US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has urged both Israel and Hamas to finalize a hostage for ceasefire deal at the earliest.
Absolutely. Blinken claimed that 90% of the deal has been agreed upon by both the parties, with just a few issues remaining, including the Philadelphia corridor.
So at this point, it seems to me that it's really incumbent on both parties to get to yes on these remaining issues.
As US continues its efforts for a deal, Hamas accused the Joe Biden-led country for being blindly biased towards Israel. In a video statement, Hamas lead negotiator, Qatar-based Khalil al-Hayya, urged the US to press Israel for a truce in Gaza. He accused Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of evading a ceasefire in the Palestinian territory.
إن على الإدارة الأمريكية ورئيسها بايدن إن أرادت الوصول فعلا إلى صفقة ووقف لإطلاق النار وإنجاز هذه الصفقة بشكل جدي وفعال، عليها التخلي عن انحيازها الأعمى للاحتلال الصهيوني ودعمها اللامحدود لهذه الحكومة الفاشية وممارسة ضغط حقيقي على نتنياهو وحكومته وإلزامهم بما تم التوافق عليه سابقا.
Meanwhile, a report is doing the rounds that the families of captives with American citizenship are petitioning Biden administration to cut a unilateral deal with Hamas for their release.
Speaking to Channel 12, US-Israeli hostage Sangue Dekeljan's father said there is no truth to this report. 6 days since the recovery of the bodies of the 6 hostages killed by Hamas, Israel continues to see protests.
Hundreds of protesters took to the streets in Tel Aviv demanding an immediate deal. They set off flares on a road they blocked in the city, calling on the government to do more to bring home the remaining held hostages by Hamas.
Meanwhile, countries continue with their efforts to avoid the war in Gaza from spilling over into the larger West Asian region. Jordanian Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi, during a press conference with his German counterpart Annalena Baerbock, warned that the region was only a brink away from a catastrophe.
ألمانيا سباقة كانت دائما في الضغط من أجل تطبيق القانون الدولي، تطبيق القانون الدولي الإنساني، ومكانة ألمانيا والقيم الألمانية تفرض على ألمانيا اتخاذ خطوات واضحة فيما يتعلق بفرض عقوبات على الحكومة الإسرائيلية وعلى المسؤولين الإسرائيليين الذين يبثون ثقافة الكراهية ويحرضون على القتل ويبررون قتل الأبرياء ويدفعون المنطقة كلها باتجاه التصعيد.
And for more on this, we have with us Dov Zakim, former Undersecretary of Defense under the George Bush administration. Now, who is currently the Senior Advisor at Center for Strategic and International Studies. Now, he's joining us live from Washington. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me begin by asking you, how do you assess these charges leveled at Netanyahu? Do you think he's doing this for political gains?
Well, that's what many people say, not just political gain, but to stay in power because he has been subject to indictments. He's actually on trial. And the feeling is that the longer he can prolong this war, the longer he can avoid essentially being prosecuted and convicted. Now, there are two sides to this, to the charges and countercharges that you hear from Netanyahu on the one hand and Hamas on the other. I mean, let's not forget who started all of this. It was the Hamas massacre on October 7th and the seizing of ordinary civilians, older people, babies, that has caused this hostage crisis. But Netanyahu right now has an opportunity essentially to call Hamas's bluff. That's to say, he now does not have a legislature to answer to because they are on recess till virtually the end of October. And as a result, they can't bring his government down. Even the extremists in his government cannot do anything because there won't be a vote of confidence, of no confidence, actually. There's no Knesset to vote it. So were Netanyahu to agree to a deal, then the onus would be on Hamas to say why they don't want this deal. Now, he's holding out for this Philadelphia corridor. It's about 9 miles wide. And the question that people are asking, including his defense minister, I should say, is, well, you know, if it's so important, well, Israel has fought 2 wars with Hamas while Netanyahu was prime minister. Why didn't he ever talk about this before? Clearly, if he makes, if he indicates a willingness to give up this fixation on Philadelphia, which, oh, by the way, they could always seize at any time if they want to, and there are other ways to deal with the problem, then Hamas has to explain why they don't want a ceasefire. Many people believe they don't want it. Netanyahu, many people think, is waiting for Donald Trump to win the next election because then he thinks he'll have a free hand from the United States. Hamas, of course, just the opposite. They don't want Trump in there, but they are holding out because they, too, would like this war to continue. So someone has to essentially call the other side's bluff, and Netanyahu is in a very strong position to do that.
Mr. Zakhem, as you mentioned, I'll take 2 points from your response that, Hamas wants this war to continue as well. So you're saying that both sides want the war to continue. And you're also mentioning that the Philadelphia corridor is one that Netanyahu is sticking around with. At this point, there are reports suggesting that 90% of creases have been ironed out for a ceasefire deal. When you talk about the last 10%, Philadelphia corridor is one we've been hearing about. What are the other sticking points, and are they conciliable?
Well, essentially, the problem is where do the Israelis move? Hamas wants them out completely. Netanyahu certainly doesn't want to do that. So there's an issue there. And that one and frankly, the Philadelphia corridor are the 2 big ones. Of course, there are small details. Obviously, how do the Israelis move out? How much of the corridor do they give up? When do they give it up? All of those issues have to be ironed out. And quite honestly, 90% is just not good enough. It has to be 100%. And right now, although Secretary Blinken has essentially performed yeoman's duty flying out so often to the Middle East, he cannot bring the horses to water. He can bring the horses to water, but if they don't want to drink, they won't drink. Someone has to be willing to say, okay, I accept this deal, and tell the other side, are you willing to accept it? Netanyahu is in a position to do that, and his people, so many Israelis, are arguing day and night for the release of the hostages. Hundreds of thousands are demonstrating. The country is bitterly divided. He can do something about that. After all said and done, Israel's a democracy. Hamas is certainly not. And Hamas is quite willing to lose its own people. They don't care. They've announced that. They don't care how many Palestinians are killed. but the Israelis clearly are in a position to essentially put the onus on Hamas. Whether Netanyahu does it or not is a whole other issue.
All right, Mr. Hakim, I'll take your point from the first answer. You mentioned Hamas fearing Trump to come after the elections. How important do you think is it for the U.S. now to secure a ceasefire deal considering the November elections in less than 60 days?
Well, obviously, if there's a ceasefire, Mr. Biden is the leading candidate for a Nobel Peace Prize. And even if he doesn't get it, it's a tremendous legacy and an end to his presidency. It also, of course, will help his vice president, who's running for president. Ms. Harris would, of course, take a lot of credit, or at least be given credit, for being supportive. So it would give them a boost. If there's no ceasefire, if there's no deal, Trump can argue, as he has in fact been arguing, that were he president, this would have all been resolved. But then again, Mr. Trump has also said that were he president, Russia would not have invaded Ukraine. There are many things he says, if only he had been president.
All right, Mr. Davzakim, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate how you break down complicated scenarios in a manner that is easily understandable. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights. That was former Undersecretary of Defense in the George W. Bush administration, Davzakim, joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's move on. Gaza's health ministry has claimed that the Israeli authorities are refusing to coordinate the entry of medical teams for polio vaccination.
Well, the claim was made with respect to the areas east of Ala al-Din in south of the Gaza Strip, where a large percentage of targeted children are located.
Only yesterday, the healthcare workers started vaccinating children against polio in the southern Gaza Strip. This after the conclusion of the first phase of the immunization in the territory's central areas. Now, just to remind you, Israel has said that the limited pauses in the fighting to facilitate the campaign will continue through September 9th.
However, the offensive continued elsewhere in the enclave. Gaza health authorities reported that at least 21 were killed in the recent Israeli strikes, including a hit on Kamal Adwan Hospital.
This comes amid operations in the West Bank. Israeli troops bombed the Jenin refugee camp. Also, they stormed the Tukarem refugee camp again after briefly withdrawing earlier in the day. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, since last Wednesday, 39 Palestinians have been killed, over 130 injured in Israel's strikes on the West Bank.
Well, shifting focus to Germany now. German police has identified the gunman who was shot dead in Munich near the Israeli consulate as an 18-year-old Austrian national.
Right. The suspect's motive is still under investigation. However, the police labeled the shooting as a terrorist attack. The suspect was killed in exchange of fire near the Israeli consulate and Nazi documentation center. Police was alerted about a person carrying a long-barreled weapon, leading to an exchange of gunfire between police and the suspect.
Was wir bestätigen können, ist tatsächlich, dass der Täter.
The suspect has now been identified, and it is actually an 18-year-old with Austrian citizenship who, as far as I know, is a resident in Austria. I would like to ask for your understanding regarding the motive, as the investigation is still ongoing.
Hier laufen die Ermittlungen noch, und wir werden hier zu gegebener Zeit.
The shooting occurred on the anniversary of the 1972 attack at the Munich Olympics, in which Palestinian militants killed 11 Israeli athletes. Bavaria's State Interior Minister Joachim Herrmann said there was a possible connection to the 1972 terror attack anniversary behind the incident, but police will investigate the link.
Aber eines ist klar, es gibt einen schlimmen Verdacht, weil es heute eben auch.
There is a serious suspicion because today is also the day of remembrance, the anniversary of the assassination attempt at the 1972 Olympic Games. There may be a connection. It still needs to be clarified. But one thing is clear to us. Jewish institutions are given special protection in Bavaria, a high level of security.
Deswegen geben wir auch erneut ein Schutzversprechen ab.
The Israeli Foreign Ministry said that the consulate in Munich was closed on Thursday for a commemoration of the 1972 massacre, and no one from the consulate staff was injured in the incident.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that anti-Semitism and Islamism have no place in Germany. He posted on social media, "The quick reaction of the emergency services in Munich may have prevented something terrible from happening today."
The Austrian police later raided the suspect's home and said that the man had Bosnian roots. He was investigated last year for possible terrorist links on suspicion of becoming religiously radicalized. Police said that the suspect had assaulted his classmates and shown an online interest in explosives and weapons, but prosecutors dropped the case in April 2023.
In United States, Georgia state officials have arrested the father of the 14-year-old suspected school shooter, Colt Gray.
Now, this is in connection with Wednesday's shooting that killed 4 people at Appalachia High School. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation said that the 54-year-old Colin Gray was charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter and 2 counts of second-degree murder.
The GBI has arrested Colin Gray, age 54, in connection to the shooting here at Appalachia High School. Colin is Colt Gray's father that was arrested yesterday. He is charged with the following: 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 8 counts of cruelty to children. Mr. Gray, these charges stem from Mr. Gray knowingly allowing his son, Colt, to possess a weapon.
Colin's son, Colt Gray, has been charged with 4 counts of felony murder for killing 2 of his fellow students and his classmates, and 2 teachers. Officials have said that he would be tried as an adult. Both Gray's father and son had been questioned by local officials in neighboring Jackson County last year in connection with an online threat to commit a school shooting. However, there was no probable cause for their arrest at that time, the FBI said.
In that 2023 probe, the father said he had hunting guns in the house, but that his son did not have unsupervised access to them, and the son died making the threats online.
Georgia State and Barrow County investigators said the younger Gray used an AR platform-style weapon or a semi-automatic rifle to carry out the attack on Wednesday. It remained unclear how the shooter obtained the weapon. Investigators are yet to comment on what may have motivated the first U.S. campus mass shooting since the start of the school year.
The charges against Colin Gray come after the April sentencing of the mother and father of a high school shooter in Michigan. That ruling is believed to be the first time parents were held legally responsible for their children's action in a school shooting.
Experts and gun safety advocates have said their trials were an important step in holding gun-owning parents more accountable for school violence carried out by their children. Studies by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security have shown that around 75% of all school shooters obtained their weapons at home.
All right, moving on, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is on a visit to Haiti to solidify the UN-backed security mission in the Caribbean country ravaged by gang violence.
Blinken on Thursday visited the multinational security support base located in Port-au-Prince and met with the MSS commander, Godfrey Outridge, and the Haitian National Police Chief. Blinken held meetings with Haitian Prime Minister Gary Conille and the head of its Presidential Council, Edgar Leblanc, and called for renewing the United Nations mandate for an international security mission to help Haiti fight armed gangs.
The mission itself needs to be renewed, and that's what we're working on right now. But we also want to make sure that we have something that is reliable, that's sustainable, and we'll look at every option to do that. So a peacekeeping operation would be one such option. I think there are others.
In a statement, he said that he hoped to see an electoral council established to organize elections in the country next year. He added that there were plans to convene a ministerial meeting at the UN General Assembly for additional financial contributions and to renew the mission's mandate, and announced a further $45 million humanitarian aid for Haiti.
The United States is also committed to using this foundation of security to support and unlock the potential of the Haitian people. We're the largest contributor of humanitarian assistance to Haiti. That includes an additional $45 million in humanitarian aid that I'm announcing today, bringing the total U.S. aid to over $210 million this year.
Blinken's crucial visit comes as Haiti continues to battle violent gangs that have taken over much of the capital and started moving into nearby regions as well. Earlier on Wednesday, Haitian Prime Minister Gary Conil expanded the state of emergency to cover the entire nation.
U.S. is largest contributor to the mission that the country requested in 2022 to help fight gangs and reclaim territory. The UN-backed police officers from Kenya started arriving in Haiti last June.
Hunter Biden, son of U.S. President Joe Biden, has pleaded guilty to federal tax charges to avoid facing another criminal trial.
Absolutely. And this comes after he was convicted in a separate gun case. Hunter Biden entered the surprise plea hours after jury selection was supposed to begin in federal court in Los Angeles. Now, the case brought up by the Justice Department accused Biden of a scheme to avoid paying at least $1.4 million in taxes.
The judge in the case said that in pleading guilty, Biden faced a maximum penalty of 15 years in prison and fines ranging from $500,000 to $1 million. He is already facing the prospect of potential prison time after his conviction in June on 3 felony gun charges.
Hunter decided to enter his plea to protect those he loves from unnecessary hurt and cruel humiliation. He will now move on with us to the sentencing phase, while keeping open the options to raise the many clear issues with this case on appeal.
The surprise guilty plea is the latest twist in the long-running legal saga of the president's son. He was supposed to avoid trial in both cases under a plea deal last year with prosecutors that fell apart after the judge raised questions about it. And it's time now for a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
Well, lots more on the other side. This is World DNA. When we come back, we bring you a complete report on what's happening in France. 2 months after elections, France finally has a prime minister. 73-year-old Michel Barnier will be the oldest prime minister in France's modern political history. Stay tuned for that complete report.
Also on the other side, a renowned elections forecaster known for successfully predicting the outcome of U.S. presidential elections has released his prediction that Vice President Kamala Harris will win against former President Donald Trump in November's election. We'll get you more on the other side.
Namaste. Hello, friends. We did Dr. Subhash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years, from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to restart again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India. Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subhash Chandra Show.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at yoursarthi@such.org.in. This week on World of Africa, Chinese lenders approve $4 billion in loans to Africa in 2023, the first annual increase since 2016. Crime statistics in South Africa reveal alarming numbers. Over 6,000 people murdered between April and June this year, most of them women and children. And Morocco embraces eco-tourism by offering visitors more sustainable experiences. All this and more this week on World of Africa at these times.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Welcome back. You're watching World DNA with me, Jyotsna Kumar, and my colleague Shailan Chanana. Let's start with the headlines first.
India's Enforcement Directorate raids house of Sandeep Ghosh, the former principal of RG Kaur Medical College and Hospital in Kolkata, in relation with graft and fraud charges. Raids also conducted at the house of his aide, Biplab Singh. Both Ghosh and Singh are already in CBI custody.
U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken urges both Israel and Hamas to finalize a Gaza truce, reiterates U.S. assessments that 90% of deal was ready.
Hamas urges United States to press Israel for a truce in Gaza. Lead negotiator accuses Prime Minister Netanyahu of derailing a ceasefire deal.
Ukraine's parliament approves nomination of Andrei Sybiha as foreign minister. He replaces Dmytro Kuleba as part of the biggest government reshuffle since the Russian invasion in 2022.
France gets a new prime minister after months of political upheaval. Newly appointed Michel Barnier calls for more unity and respect in the politically divided country.
German police termed the shooting near the Israeli consulate in Munich a terrorist attack. Suspect shot dead by police identified as 18-year-old Austrian national.
Police in United States arrest the father of the teenage suspect in connection with a school shooting that left 4 people dead in Georgia.
Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries agreed to delay a planned oil output increase for October and November. The group added that it could further pause or reverse the hikes if needed. This comes as crude prices hit their lowest in 9 months.
39-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo becomes the first player to score 900 career goals. The 5-time World Player of the Year was on target as Portugal beat Croatia 2-1 in the Nations League.
A renowned elections forecaster known for successfully predicting the outcome of U.S. presidential elections has released his new prediction.
Well, the prediction goes as follows. Vice President Kamala Harris will win against former President Donald Trump in November's election.
My prediction, based on the keys to the White House system, which has been right for 40 years, is that we are going to have a precedent-breaking president, that Kamala Harris will become the first woman president of the United States.
The famous forecaster has successfully predicted the outcome of 9 of the last 10 presidential elections using his election model based on 13 true or false questions that ignore the views of political pundits and pollsters. He said while his election model favors Harris to win, the candidate's stances on foreign policy and real-world events could influence the outcome of the race.
Can things change? Of course. I can't predict what's going to happen in the world, and we have 2 fluid wars, but I've taken that into account in my call. Even if Harris lost both of my foreign military keys, failure and success, she still would be down only 5 keys, 1 short of the 6 keys that it takes to predict an incumbent party defeat.
Meanwhile, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris headed to Pennsylvania as she prepares to debate Donald Trump next Tuesday. It comes just 75 days after President Joe Biden's disastrous debate performance triggered a political earthquake that ultimately forced him out from the race.
Furthermore, the White House has reacted to Russian President Vladimir Putin's recent response that he supports Kamala Harris and not Donald Trump. White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby said Putin must stop interfering in U.S. elections.
Meanwhile, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump warned Jewish voters that an election win for his Democratic rival Kamala Harris would mean the end of Israel. Speaking remotely to a crowd of more than 1,000 Republican Jewish coalition donors in Las Vegas, he also said he will ban refugee resettlement from what he called terror-infested areas like Gaza.
Kamala Harris wins, terrorist armies will wage an unceasing war to drive Jews out of the Holy Land, and you know it. And we've had a great relationship with Israel, but I can say honestly that we got 25% of the vote. We got 26% after 4 years, after I did more for Israel than any other president by far.
Earlier, speaking at the New York Economic Club, Donald Trump said he will establish a government efficiency commission headed by billionaire supporter Elon Musk if he wins the November 5th election. During a wide-ranging speech, he also laid out his economic vision for the country.
I will create a government efficiency commission tasked with conducting a complete financial and performance audit of the entire federal government and making recommendations for drastic reforms. We need to do it. Can't go on the way we are now. And Elon, because he's not very busy, has agreed to head that task force.
Shifting focus to France, 2 months after the elections, France finally has a prime minister.
If in January it was Gabriel Attal, the youngest prime minister of France, today it is 73-year-old Michel Barnier, who will be the oldest prime minister in France's modern political history.
In his first remarks, since his appointment, Barnier pledged that he would work towards more respect and unity in a politically divided country after months of political upheaval.
Barnier led the EU talks with Britain over its exit from the bloc from 2016 till 2021. Prior to that, the conservative politician held roles in various French governments and was also an EU commissioner. He is a member of the Liberal Conservative Party, the Republicans.
The appointment comes after weeks of President Macron deliberating with political parties. He rejected the left's candidate, Lucie Cassets, and the left isn't happy with Barnier as the prime minister.
Our reaction does not focus on the qualities of this person. That is not the subject. The subject is that the president has just decided to officially deny the result of the legislative elections that he himself called for. And so the election has been stolen from the French people.
The far-right National Rally, whose party is one of the biggest in parliament, has put out a post on social media saying they will judge the new prime minister on his general policy speech, his budgetary decisions, and his actions on the evidence.
The 2-month-old chaos began with Macron's decision to call for snap parliamentary elections in France. The results threw the centrist coalition out of majority and produced a hung parliament. While Barnier's appointment does end weeks of political deadlock, the tough days haven't ended. With a fractured parliament, adopting reforms will be a challenge. And the first major task for Barnier will be to submit next year's budget plan to the National Assembly. And if other parties are not satisfied, it could trigger a vote of no confidence.
Good evening. How are you feeling this evening?
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi returned to New Delhi after concluding his 3-day visit to Brunei and Singapore.
Well, during his visit, Prime Minister Modi held bilateral meetings with Singaporean counterpart Lawrence Wong. Both leaders reviewed the progress of relationship between India and Singapore. The two sides signed and exchanged 4 MOUs in areas of technology, semiconductors, healthcare and skill development. Singapore Prime Minister Lawrence Wong also accompanied Prime Minister Modi to a semiconductor facility.
Both leaders acknowledged India and Singapore's shared history, long tradition of friendship and extensive cooperation across a wide range of areas.
Prime Minister Modi extended an invitation to Prime Minister Wong to visit India, which he accepted. He also asked Singapore's semiconductor companies to participate in Semicon India exhibition this month.
And before this, Prime Minister Modi was in Brunei's capital on official state visit, where he held wide-ranging talks with Brunei Sultan Haji Hassanal Bolkiah and inaugurated India's new chancery at its High Commission.
India has surpassed China to become the top-weighted nation in the MSCI Emerging Market Investable Market Index.
This marks a historic shift in global market dynamics, with India's equity weighing now at 22.27% compared to China's 21.58%. The surge comes despite China's larger market capitalization, underscoring India's growing economic influence.
The MSCI is a key indicator tracked by funds managing around $500 billion in assets. This index includes large, mid and small cap stocks from emerging markets, offering a broader perspective than the standard MSCI EM index. India's rise is partly due to MSCI trimming Chinese stocks from its indices amid China's market underperformance and regulatory challenges. At the same time, India's economic conditions and more favorable investment regulations have boosted its market presence.
Last week, MSCI added 7 Indian stocks to its standard index while cutting 60 Chinese names, further narrowing the gap between the two nations. In 2021, China's weighting was 38.7%, significantly ahead of India's 9.2%. But this difference has rapidly decreased. Major Indian companies like Infosys and ICICI Bank now hold significant weightings, while some emerging market funds remain cautious due to India's high valuations. The country's increased prominence in MSCI indices could drive further foreign capital inflows. Goldman Sachs analysts have warned that Vice President Kamala Harris's proposed corporate tax hike could reduce earnings for S&P 500 companies by approximately 5%.
Well, the plan, which seeks to raise the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%, is part of Harris' broader initiative to ensure that large corporations pay a fair share of taxes. Analysts noted that for every 1 percentage point increased in the US statutory tax rate, S&P 500 earnings per share would drop by about $2. This follows Harris' promise to use the additional revenue for infrastructure projects and middle-class tax relief.
Goldman Sachs analysis estimates that the corporate tax rate hike could reduce S&P 500 company profits by as much as 8%, factoring in additional taxes such as the alternative minimum tax increase from 15% to 21%.
While Harris' plan may reduce corporate profits, it aims to fund the construction of 3 million homes and provide tax breaks for parents. On the other hand, Donald Trump's proposal to lower the corporate tax rate to 15% could boost S&P 500 earnings by 4%. The broader economic impact of these tax proposals remains a key issue ahead of the presidential election. Goldman Sachs previously noted that a Democratic win would likely provide a stronger boost to economic growth over the next 2 years, while a Republican administration could reduce economic output through higher import tariffs and stricter immigration policies.
Harris and Trump offer sharply different visions for tax reform with potential consequences for corporate earnings, middle-class tax relief, and overall economic growth.
Because of Donald
All right, next up, let's quickly get you a glimpse of what's happening in technology. We'll begin this by the European Union official who has suggested that Google's decision to block Enel's e-mobility app from its Android Auto platform could violate competition laws. Android Auto connects Android phones to a car's dashboard, enabling hands-free access to apps like navigation, music, and messaging while driving. The statement aligns with Italy's antitrust authority, which fined Google $113 million in 2021 for preventing Enel's Juice Pass app from being used on Android Auto. Juice Pass is a mobile application that helps electric vehicle drivers locate and manage charging stations. Officials argue that by blocking third-party apps like Juice Pass, Google may be abusing its dominant market position, which could harm consumers by reducing competition. Google had initially cited security concerns and the lack of a specific template as reasons for the block.
According to reports, data from Walt Disney that was leaked online in July included financial and strategy information, as well as personal information of some staff and customers. A hacking group called Nullbulge claimed responsibility for the cyber attack. Reports suggest some of the data contained passport numbers, visa details, addresses, and place of birth of Disney Cruise Line staff, while another spreadsheet had names, addresses, and phone numbers of some Disney Cruise Line passengers. The leaked files also included details on revenue generated by Disney Plus and ESPN Plus, park pricing offers, and login credentials of some of Disney's cloud infrastructure.
As per a study conducted by US-based George Mason University, robots can lie and deceive just like humans. Researchers discovered that robots can deceive humans in 3 scenarios: external state deceptions, hidden state deceptions, and superficial state deceptions. During the study, in the external state deception scenario, a robot working as a caretaker for a woman with Alzheimer's lied that her late husband will be home soon. In the hidden state deception scenario, a robot housekeeper secretly filmed a woman. And lastly, in the superficial state deception scenario, a robot working in a shop lied about feeling pain while moving furniture.
All right, let's take a look at some stories that are making headlines in the world of sports. World number 2, Arena Sabalenka has reached second straight U.S. Open final. The Belarusian powered past local hope Emma Navarro in straight sets. The 2-time Australian Open champion showcase 3-year-old was down 2-4 after being broken for the 3rd time in the match.